Everybody on there that's going to be on there?
As far as I'm aware, we are live now.
We are live now. Hello, everyone. It's 5 o'clock. Welcome to the Rangeley Broadband Initiative, Rangeley Region Broadband Initiative Workshop. We'll open it up here at a couple of seconds after 5 o'clock. It says introduction of the municipal officers and plantation. I'll start off by introducing my colleague Cindy Egan. I see Shelley Lowell is on there, I believe. Hello, Shelley. Okay, Ethan Schaefer is on there. And I do not see David Haley yet, but when he comes on, if we could have the representative from Dallas, I'm looking at the names here. Is Linda
I'm
there?
here, Steve.
Hi, Linda. Thank you.
And my dog.
Anybody else from Dallas with you, Linda?
I believe not.
Okay. Sandy River.
Joanne Taylor.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for joining us. Anybody else with you?
No.
Okay. Rangeley Plantation.
This is Laura Reynolds. I did speak with Scott Milbury. He was attempting to be here. Hopefully he will be before the time is up, but he said if he wasn't, I could relay the information to them.
Wonderful. Thank you, Laura. Laura also represents the Economic Development Committee here in Rangeley and a myriad of other volunteer projects. Okay, those are the municipal officers. We have a number of other folks. I don't know what you all can see on your screens, but I've got quite a few people here in front of me, including Joe Roach, our town manager. And I believe we also, I'm trying to see them all here. There she is, Rebecca Carmichael. We're going to do a brief overview here next, and we have a member from CCI. Who would that be?
Jeff Nevins.
How are you, Jeff? Okay, you got, according to me, my agenda, you've got 3 minutes.
Okay, everything I know in 3 minutes. First of all, I wanted to just remind everybody that, I think Charlie, maybe you can help. The information that we had posted for people, we had put together a Q&A. There was a offer email which describes what we had put forth as a proposal. There was also a description of a similar project that we had done in New Hampshire and Chesterfield. There was the original PowerPoint, and I also would offer up, if you want, to put my email address there in case people go on and are looking at those materials and have questions. I'm more than willing to, deal with questions that may come up if people are trying to find out more about what it is that we propose. So, and Charlie, I think that information was posted on the Rangeley site. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So what is it that we proposed? This is truly a public-private partnership to fund a full fiber optic network to all the residents in Rangeley Plantation, Dallas Plantation, and Sandy River Plantation. The network is a fiber-based network with symmetrical speeds. That means that they're the same on the upload as the download, with speeds up to 1 gigabit. You will have availability to full bundling for phone, internet, and video available. We talked a little bit when we originally met. There's no cost to installation for the individuals, provided that they have an existing communication line. And what that means is they either have to have existing telephone poles that go into their home or down their road, or conduit that would go into their house. And there's no charge to hook people up that have those, the existing communication line in. It's a 12 to 24 month construction line from the time that we sign the contract. There's no data caps. I don't know if that means anything to anybody, but that's a pretty significant option. The other thing is the funding model that we are presenting is very similar to what we've done in the state of New Hampshire. And just, I'll back up just a little bit. We've done pretty close to 20 projects over there with the same type of model. And what happens is the towns, and in this case, the 4 communities, the 3 plantations and the town of Rangeley, would fund the backbone network, which would be the fiber network that would be built on all the roads and streets in the 4 communities. That total cost is $3,702,725. So it's 3.7 roughly $1 million. And that would be financed through a bond. Our company, CCI, would be responsible for the backbone to the home connection. So it would be from the telephone pole, essentially from what we call the sidewalk to the house. And that is estimated to cost somewhere in the area of $2.4 million. And how does this work? It's a business model that is based on the cost of the project is being paid for by the end users. We would assess the end user an end user fee, and that is a monthly fee that would be on top of what the individual would be paying for their broadband connection. And that would go towards paying off the bond, which would be the interest and principal that the community would have to pay on the bond that it would be issuing to cover the cost of the network. We estimated that the initial charge is going to be $10. So that would be in addition to whatever normal monthly fee that the person has for the type of service that they take. The fee would be used to help us reimburse the town an amount equal to the annual or the monthly. In most cases, it's the monthly principal and interest on the bond or loan. And for that, we would contractually guarantee the monthly principal and interest. If the amount collected from the end users from this fee isn't sufficient to cover the bond cost, we make up the difference. There's no impact, there's no tax impact to the residents of the 4 communities. So it's, in that regard, if you use it, you will pay for it. If you don't, you won't. The fee can be reviewed and reset. We typically have instituted in the contract a biennial review of that fee. So the fee will never go up, and it could go down. Depends on the payment schedule. It also depends on subscription rates. If we get a lot of people who sign up, our goal with the user fee is to collect that to offset the cost of the bond. We're not in it to make money from that. So if we get a subscription rate that's significantly higher than what we project, then we can reduce it. And we have set, and I'll give you a rough idea, most of the infrastructure fees are between $8 and $12 in the communities that we've done this so far. The towns own the bonded, funded elements of the network. That part of the network that the towns would pay for, they own. We would own the connection from the pole to the house. We would be responsible for the day-to-day operations, the maintenance, and the upkeep of the facilities. If somebody goes out and crashes into a pole and severs the fiber line, we're going to go out and fix it. The cost, and that's something that people typically want to know, the cost for a 50 over 50 connection is about $35 now. So if you were to take a 50 over 50 connection, on top of that, the $10 monthly fee, you're going to be paying around $45 for a 50 over 50 connection. That doesn't include phone or any taxes that may apply. We've also, in most of the situations where we've done this, we've covered the town's legal cost to review the contract agreement. We try to do as much as we can to not impact the cost of the taxpayers or the towns that are involved in this. So we've covered the legal cost to review the contract and also the cost to secure the bond financing. All details will be part of the final contract agreement with the towns. Typically, after we come to an agreement and the towns do what they have to do to approve the borrowing side of the equation, then we get into the contract and we go back and forth on the contract, and that typically goes back to the towns for final approval. And then last but not least, we would do this in a phased designed and build plan. We have created a website in other towns that we've done this so people can can see what's going on. And we typically have turned up areas as we build it, so that if you're in an area that is built first, you will have access to it earlier than some of the others. But we'll provide status updates. We work with the towns to develop the construction plans and try to keep them as much as possible involved and also aware of what we're doing on the ground. So that's the essential elements of it. In a very short view, I would encourage people, if you have further questions, we'll be happy to answer them. But also, I would encourage people to go and read the materials that we posted. There's a lot of good information there. And as I said, Charlie, I'll be happy to provide my email address so that if there's additional questions, people certainly can send them on to me.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Now, I'm assuming there's going to be some questions. I have a lot of people on my screen. Jeff, is there anybody else that you'd like to offer anything before we open it up for questions?
I don't think so at this point.
Okay, perfect. If questions are going to come up, since some of you have video, I will see hands. Some do not have video. If you'd like to ask a question, please say Mr. Chair, because there's a couple of Steves out there, and it'll get confusing. So if there are some questions, say Mr. Chair, and then we'll direct them. Cindy, do you have a question? No? Okay, I'm sorry. And yes, I see you. I can't see your name. Mary Ellen?
Yes, I was just wondering, I'm in an area where we have underground power. How does that affect this plan?
Did you hear the question, sir? Jeff?
I did. I'm sorry. And so it's a conduit into the house?
I'm in a subdivision. The whole subdivision has underground power.
Okay. All right.
There are about 200 families in the subdivision, or property owners.
As long as we can access it through whatever the underground is there, we would be in a good position to do it and get the service in there. So I think we probably would have to look at the situation to understand specifically what's going on. But if there's room there for us to access it, it wouldn't be a problem.
I think that's a very good question. Is it going to require an engineer to come up and take a look at each subdivision and the various communities?
Good question. I don't know that we've done that in the past. I think in a lot of cases we can tell that beforehand, but certainly let me take that one back. And Ryan, I'm sorry, Ryan Whitlock's on. I just noticed. Ryan, is that something you could answer?
Yeah, I think so. So going back to the question of the underground power, generally there would be, a public easement, and the likelihood is that we would have cable already in that easement for just your regular dial tone. So we would follow in that same easement. Normally, if you have a subdivision that's already got buried utilities, then we bring fiber in, we would do the same, and we would bury it. If you have buried cable today, we're not going to come set poles in neighborhoods that already have buried power or buried telephone wires. So we would follow the same path. It is likely that you have some sort of conduit then access back to your home in order to provide access for the new cable. The question on the engineer, yes, the expectation would be that we would have engineers that would be designing the entire fiber build for us. They'd be our engineers that would do the design, and they basically come out and figure that out. In areas where you have buried cable, we would plan to bury. We have quite a bit of aerial cable in New England, so wherever it's aerial, we just attach to the existing poles.
Okay, thank you. Next question, please.
You're welcome.
Yes, Cindy?
So just to follow up, Mary Ellen just really brought up a very good question. This is one of the largest established subdivisions in the area, and it encompasses all 4 towns.
Yes.
So it's quite an example of probably a more complex situation, and that's why we need all of the plantations, kind of involved here, because though this is one subdivision and one association, it is spread amongst Rangeley and the 3 plantations. That's all.
That's a good point. And
I have a question. Jeff?
Yep.
What actually comes to the house? Does the fiber optic come all the way to the house, or does it just go to the pole and then it comes in on the existing phone line?
I'll let Ryan answer that, but it's essentially a fiber cable that comes into the house, and then there's some equipment that has to be installed either outside of the house or inside of the house.
Right, it's fiber all the way to the house. So basically what we do is we'll bring the fiber directly into your home. And can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, we'll bring the fiber into your home, and then we place what's called an ONT, or an optical network terminal. And then from there, we run a category 5 cable to actually set your router. So fiber all the way into the home.
Okay, just so we don't have people stepping on, please remember, let me identify who you are so we can. Pilots like Mr. Kloss have a tendency to just jump on the radio whenever they're ready. How are you, Bill? Hi, Bill. Okay, any other questions? Yes, Mark, Mr. Beauregard.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I was wondering how long the user fee stays in place.
The end user fee.
The end user fee will stay in place throughout the life of the bond cycle, which typically is 20 years.
Okay, so if you get a higher than anticipated number of people to sign up, with your experience, is there any advantage to the community whether to lower the end user rate or to try to pay off the bond quicker?
I think typically there's a couple ways that you could pay the bond off. And that, that would be a decision that the town would have to make as to how, but I do not think that in a 20-year bond that you can pay it off early. There's different ways to pay it off in terms of the level payment or, but I think you would adjust it based on what the monthly payment fee would be and adjust it accordingly. So you could reduce it if you had a subscription rate that was higher than what we had projected and we were collecting more money than was needed for the monthly payment. And that's where the biennial review would come into place. We typically would sit with the towns and discuss the payment structure that they've chosen and also what the subscription rate and it looks like, and then determine what the appropriate fee might be going forward.
Thank you. One other question. Do you folks supply the modems for free?
Ryan, do you want to take that one?
Sure, yes, we do. That is that's embedded into the price, the monthly price.
Okay,
So based on the speed that you have, you get the modem that's set up to accommodate those speeds?
Mark, I've got some other folks, they said yes, they provide the modem.
Okay,
That's correct.
Mary Ellen, you're next.
Do you have any idea how the bond is going to be divided between the 4 towns?
That's something that the towns will have to decide. There has been some discussions about creating a utility district for the 4 towns. We're willing to work with whatever structure it is that the communities end up deciding upon. I think it would be easiest if there was one structure that got the funding through that one legal entity. But that's something that the towns, I think, have been discussing, and that's something that we're willing to adjust and work with the towns accordingly.
We're going to get into that here in just a minute. If you look at your agendas, there's some other options. So relative to the cables and what we've been discussing, are there any more questions?
We have a chat question.
Where's that information
Okay.
posted? They
Okay.
said the information was posted somewhere. Where is it?
There
on
is
their
a,
webpage.
who am I listening to?
I guess you were talking about Cliff Raymond writes, what is the priority of running fiber? Rangeley first and then Plantations, or did you start at the central location and spider out in several directions?
How far south from your hub station across from Sandy River Plantation Town Office will the fiber be run? Jeff, can you see that chat line?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. I want to make sure that Ryan can see that as well. Again, this is from Clifford Raymond.
Yeah,
Question
I
is,
think
go ahead, Jeff.
I'll take a shot at that, and then I'll ask Ryan also to weigh in. But that would be part of the engineering work that we would have to do. Would be they would be determining what was the best way to build the network, where we would start, and in what segments of the 4 communities that we would build. So that would be part of the engineering design for the entire network.
Bouncing off his question before I let Ryan jump in here, it's true that fiber optic comes into Rangeley right now, and it runs through Sandy River right now. Does it run up to Dallas Hill?
I believe so. When you say Dallas Hill, you're talking about up towards the mountain?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think Jeff's right in that it's going to require the engineers to get in there and do a more detailed engineering plan to be very specific in the answer to the question. But certainly that's all part of that engineering design that would take place.
Okay. Clifford, I hope that answers your question. Anybody else?
I also saw on the chat, there was a question about 50 over 50. That is the upload and the download speed. In a fiber-based network, the speeds that would be available to people would be symmetrical. So they'd be the same upload as they would download.
Okay, thank you. All right, before we move to the next part, Joanne from Sandy River, are you all set? Okay, I see your head. Linda, are you all set from Dallas?
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Laura, you're gonna still maintain your representation. Are you all set from Rangeley Plantation?
I actually believe that Scott's now on via phone.
I don't see him. So are you all set, Laura?
Yeah, I'm all set.
Okay. I neglected to mention somebody very important into this equation. Georgia Campbell from the school. I have asked her to be part of this, and I'm glad to see you here tonight. Please make sure that if you have any questions regarding the school, that I'm made aware of it. Next up, we have Joe and Rebecca. Joe Roach, our town manager, Rebecca Carmichael Austin, are going to talk about interlocal corporation versus an independent application strategy, and a discussion to follow. Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everybody. Rebecca and I met with a couple of folks from our legal counsel this week and ran some of these things by them. And just as a housekeeping item, I want to bring this up right off the bat. We talked about it yesterday with Charlie and folks from the Economic Committee. Although this proposal is on the table, as I understand it through the Greater Franklin Development folks, that there were a couple of other proposals that have been reviewed to varying degrees of intensity over the last couple of years. Even though that's happened, it's still best practice for us, and actually a requirement for us to release an RFP for broadband services. That doesn't mean that CCI is excluded by any means. It just means it's something that we need to check off according to town's policy and best practice. So that is an item that would be in both option or scenario A and B that we're going to discuss here in a minute. So the reason we reached out for this guidance from legal was we had the question about should we move forward with a utility district or an interlocal corporation. That's one of the options. Another option is that came out of this meeting was we could move forward kind of individually, but together, so to speak. So if each town kind of took their own bond, but went through the RFP process and the planning process and the public meeting process as a group. So option A is that individual approach. And the reason that that can be accomplished, Mr. Chair, sooner than the other one is that would allow, we wouldn't be doing the step of designing and forming the interlocal corporation. We could go forward if everything fell into place this spring and go to town meetings respectively in June, and then go for bond funding later in the summer. So that's the individual approach. And I know that question came up earlier, and it is a good question. And we don't have the answer to that. We're just, Rebecca and I are here to kind of spell out the potential paths forward. So that's one of them, is to kind of go not on our own as 4 communities, but to seek bond funding individually, and then work very much like we're working tonight and move forward. And then the other one would be, as Jeff mentioned, create an interlocal corporation, which there's a statute that allows that to happen just shy of full-blown utility district. That's where we would actually become, the 4 communities would generate their own legal entity that would be one entity, and they would seek the bond funding. That would take a little more time because it would require the steps involved to create that agreement and get it all passed in the respective towns. So that's really, those are the highlights, Mr. Chair, of what we've learned. The quickest that this could get done, and this is very accelerated. I don't want to lead anybody, down a path, well, we can't back up. June is accelerated. It's possible at this point if we release the RFP and go through those steps. But that's the soonest we could do is to go to a June town meeting and then get bond funding in the fall. So those are kind of the two options. Rebecca, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, just, well, yeah. So talking to the main bond bank, it is absolutely possible for each individual community to submit separate applications, working together to submit those applications. One of the things that was brought up was rates. Could Rangeley get a better rate than, say, Sandy River or Dallas Plantation? And no, it depends on the length that you take the bond. So it doesn't matter which town it is. If you do 20 years, your rate's the same no matter what.
Okay, thank you. So that's essentially the presentation, Mr. Chairman. The next, my suggestion would be that the delegates, the folks that you've mentioned in this meeting a couple of times, from Sandy River, Rangeley Plantation, Dallas, and Rangeley and myself would get together as delegates, talk about these things, take the public feedback that we've received, and review the RFP, and go forward with the process in that way.
Okay. Questions for our town manager or our finance officer? Ethan, was that your hand? Go ahead, Ethan.
Joe, is it possible for one town or township to secure the bond and have the other towns or townships and just enter into legal agreement to make payment to the town that has the bond, where we could avoid the interlocal corp and whatever?
That may be a possibility. We haven't explored that at length yet, but we could look at that as an option. When we get into the delegate meetings, we could talk about that.
Okay.
Okay. Cindy, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just want to follow up with Ethan's question, which is a very good one. But actually, it would, if there was one municipality who took the bond out, then the other plantations wouldn't be reimbursing the one municipality. It would be consolidated. That would be submitting those monthly payments to one entity. Is that right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Jeff, you want to respond to that?
Yes, that's the way it's been structured in the agreements that we've had in the state of New Hampshire. We haven't done one like what you just described. There have been utility districts that have been formed in Vermont, but most of the ones that we've done in New Hampshire have been one town, so that there's been, the agreement has been with one single town where we've built the network. The short answer to your question is yes, but I'm not really sure how the legal document and the structure would be. That would be something that I, obviously would look to get more information and more detail from some of our legal counsel.
Anybody else? Shelley? Anything?
So I have a question. We already do have a legal entity really with all the plantations in the town, and that's the school. So is that something that the RSU could do rather than creating a utility company and things like that? I'm just throwing that out there because it's already established and we already have representation for each plantation.
I can offer introspection on that. This is Linda Jones from Dallas. The school entity cannot be intermixed by statute.
Thank you, Linda. Georgia, would you like to weigh in on that? Principal Campbell, would you like to weigh in on that? There you go.
No, I don't really have anything to say at this point. For me, this is a learning curve. So, and, the whole technology thing is complicated, but it sounds like, it sounds like there wouldn't be any benefit to us. Is that how I understand this?
I don't know if there's benefit or not. Shelley brought up the notion that there's already an entity that encompasses all of the plantations, and that would be the school. Linda Jones suggested that by statute, that's not possible. So that's the short answer.
Yeah.
Jeff, do you have anything to add to that? No, okay. Any other questions? Okay, relative to the agenda, you'll see option A, you've read all of that. It seems to me the next movement is to get the delegates together. But before I go anywhere, I want to make sure that the delegates that are on board here have their questions answered. I'm looking for any sign that there's other comments. Joe, do you have any other suggestions relative to where we go from here?
No, Mr. Chair, I believe you're correct. The next step is for the delegates to get together, and I would recommend that we do that in the next week or so to follow up from this meeting, and then talk a little bit more about the two scenarios that we laid out and review that RFP. Rebecca's got the framework of that built now. I'm going to review it tomorrow. And again, the intent of that is not to push anybody away or backtrack. It's just to formalize that process so we have it. We can check that box off. So I think you're correct, Mr. Chair. We'll schedule a delegate meeting and then follow up on these items. And those delegate meetings, by the way, Mr. Chair, will be public, just like this one is. Folks can witness and speak at your discretion.
Yeah, totally transparent. Charlie Woodward, you're on with us. Do you have anything that you'd like to bring up for this particular gathering?
No, I'm impressed that the leadership in the communities is understanding the opportunity. I'm really pleased to see the 33 participants on this call, because it's one thing for the town leadership to understand the opportunity, but is imperative that the citizens understand the opportunity and that the citizens speak up and are engaged. And so that's what we're seeing here. It's growing and it's incumbent on each of you residents to speak to your neighbors about the opportunity so that you're all in favor of, or at least understanding of it, and then vote however you wish. But this is a tremendous opportunity for that community region.
Thank you, Charlie. Hats off to Kate Williams and Laura Reynolds, the visioning sessions that have been going on with their group. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that the Rangeley Region Health Center annually holds I like to call it a think tank. This has been high on the list for many years, and I agree with Charlie. Next up is Daryl Sterling. Do you have anything you'd like to bring up, Daryl?
Sure, a couple of things. One is the timeliness of things. I think it's win-win whether we can get things cranked up for the June meeting or November meeting this year. And my understanding, looking, Jeff, at your projects in New Hampshire, you've got one completed, you've got some in process or progress right now. Do you foresee any issues once we sign on the dotted line to move forward that you can get this build out done in approximately 18 months, give or take?
Brian, I'm going to turn that one over to Ryan. That's one that we have 12 to 24 months in all of the contracts, and we do everything we can to get it built and get it up and get it available as quickly as we can. So that we've had some success stories in Chesterfield and other places, but I'll let Ryan address the timeline.
Yeah, sure. So we've had really good success in New Hampshire with the builds and the timing of those builds. I'll say that generally for the builds that would be pretty close to this size, we start construction in an August timeframe, barring any, really bad storms that blow through New England, like such as in the fall of, I think it was 2018 or 2017. We are finishing up some of these jobs right now in February. We turned up, I think, 4 communities in December, and then we've got 5 more that are coming online here in February. So, that's kind of an August to February construction and getting everything upgraded and ready to go. Now, there's always risk that, there are material issues that could push that timeline. You can have weather issues. You could have COVID-19 issues. So I don't have any concern around 18 months, and certainly we try to build it much faster than that.
That sounds good. Because one of the things, because it's still relatively new, this whole concept of the modus operandi, have you will, for CCI doing these, that it sounds like there's not a lot of the projects done yet. Is that right? So, and Jeff, I don't know if you want to speak to it, if you want me to comment on it.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, so we built about 500 miles of fiber just in between August and up until this point right now. So we had 9 additional communities that are under construction, some of which are completed. We've got Westmoreland and Walpole, New Hampshire, that we just turned up last week and are taking orders for right now. And we have, I think, 3 more that turn up between now and the end of the month. And then we have 4 more communities that we're going to be turning up that become a little bit larger towards the end of March. So I will say that our track record is certainly strong and continuing to build. And I think right now we've got close to 22 construction crews that are up and running. So good segue. That was my next question. You could segue and have your construction crews ready should the ink be dry here on this project for the Greater Rangeley.
Okay, thank you, Daryl.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Who else we got here that we haven't spoken to? Stephen Hall, I haven't heard from you. Are you all set? Okay, Brian Warren. Peter Andrews. William Kelly.
All good.
All set, thank you. Kate, you're on. Do you have anything you'd like to add, Kate Williamson?
No, I'm good.
Thank you very much. Lynn's iPad. I don't know who Lynn is. Okay. Jack McLever. Okay, I've got everybody. The delegates will be in touch. Let's get together soon, and we'll move this thing forward. My colleagues all set? Cindy, Shelley, Ethan? Good? Good, thank you. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate it. Night.
Thanks, everybody.
Charlie Woodworth, give me a call. I left you a message today.
Will do.
Thank you, sir.